Welcome to Professionalism and Customer Service in the Health Environment, Ethical and Cultural Issues Related to Communication and Customer Service. This is Lecture B, Cultural Issues. In this lecture, we will closely explore the importance and benefits of diversity and cultural differences in healthcare. We will also discuss cultural differences that may affect communication and review the Equal Employment Opportunity Act. Finally, we will define cultural competency and talk about its key elements. The objectives for Lecture B, Ethical and Cultural Issues Related to Communication and Customer Service, are to identify major characteristics of culture, distinguish elements in intercultural communication, and perform effective intercultural communication. We are all aware of the increasing diversity of the U.S. population. According to the 2000 U.S. Census, racial and ethnic minorities constituted approximately one-third of the population, and by 2050 it is expected that half of the population will be people of color. In states like Hawaii, New Mexico, California, and Texas, minorities already represent over 50% of the population. The increasing diversity means that healthcare organizations will have a more diverse workforce and patient population. This will represent opportunities and challenges. It is important to understand how the increasing diversity will affect group dynamics and communication in healthcare settings. This knowledge will improve the effectiveness of health and health IT professionals in more diverse contexts. Although our focus in this session will be on race and ethnicity, it is important to remember that diversity goes beyond race or ethnicity. In the following sections, we will explore this in more detail. Diversity is rooted on cultural differences. We can define culture as a pattern of learned beliefs and behaviors that are shared by individuals of a group. As such, culture can affect our styles of communication, interpersonal relationships, and customs. Some examples of cultural groups include those based on race or ethnicity, gender, and nationality. Cultural differences arise from people's identification with various groups. We can think of diversity in terms of two major dimensions. Internal or primary dimensions are those core elements with which we are born and, for the most part, are out of our control, such as gender, race, ethnicity, age, physical ability, and sexual orientation. These factors have a profound effect on how we see ourselves and others. On the other hand, external or secondary dimensions are related to our life experiences and choices. These include religion, education, marital status, and income. These factors also influence our attitudes and behaviors. An individual's cultural background can then be viewed as an amalgam of different cultural beliefs and practices based on the person's identification with different groups. For example, an African American male Muslim will be culturally different from an African American female Christian, even when they share the same race. Increased diversity can have both potential positive and negative implications for organizations. On the positive side, research has shown that diverse teams tend to be more creative and innovative and can reach better decisions than homogeneous groups. In addition, a more diverse workforce can be more responsive to the needs of a culturally diverse patient population. This can result in marketing advantages as healthcare organizations reach out to a more diverse clientele. On the other hand, increased diversity can have potential negative consequences. Research has shown that more diverse work teams have greater conflict and as a result are less cohesive. This can result in lower team morale, less effective communication, and lower productivity. However, research also shows that diversity can be leveraged to maximize the positive aspects of diversity while minimizing the negative aspects. Organizational leadership, as well as organizational policies and practices, are key in managing diversity. Examples include diversity training activities and concerted efforts to create a welcoming organizational culture for all individuals irrespective of their cultural background. How can you, as a health IT professional, improve your effectiveness in a diverse work environment? The first step is to understand how cultural differences can impact your work relationships and communication. This will be the focus of the following sections. There are certain personal attitudes that can affect intercultural relationships. One of them is ethnocentrism, or the belief that one's cultural beliefs, behaviors, and values are inherently superior to those of other cultures. Ethnocentrism can be thought of as a perceptual filter by which individuals from one culture make subjective or critical evaluations of people from another culture. It is a barrier to intercultural communication since it prevents people from understanding the world of others. By nature, we all tend to be ethnocentric. The opposite of ethnocentrism is ethno-relativism, where one views different cultural beliefs, behaviors, and values as other ways of doing things, but equally valid. Ethno-relativism can lead to pluralistic organizations which accommodate different cultures. Being aware of our stereotypes is an important step in improving our intercultural communication. Humans tend to gravitate towards people that are similar to them, while generally we believe that opposites attract. On the contrary, we tend to associate with people that are like ourselves. This in-group favoritism leads to less favorable attitudes toward out-group members. This is the case with stereotypes, which are widely held beliefs or assumptions about the characteristics of all members of a cultural group. Stereotypes can affect our perceptions of others as we tend to select communication cues that reinforce our stereotypes. For example, if you believe that all poor people are lazy, then you would pay particular attention to behaviors that reinforce your stereotype, such as someone being out of work. Stereotypes can lead also to prejudice as we make judgments of others based on our preconceptions of the group they belong to. It is important to be aware of our stereotypes and how they may impact our feelings and perceptions of others. Culture can be thought of as the software that programs our behavior and tells us how to interpret others' actions. Understanding our own cultural software is another important step in improving our intercultural communication. Next, we will discuss 4 different aspects of culture and how they may impact communication. One cultural aspect relates to our sense of self and space, how close we stand to others, how or whether we touch, the degree of openness we show, and the level of formality we prefer are all parts of how we manage our sense of self and our physical space. For example, while a soft handshake may be interpreted as a sign of warmth and friendship in some Asian cultures, other cultures could interpret this as a weak, indecisive, and unassertive individual. While in some cultures touching others while speaking is typical, in other cultures this is frowned upon. Another cultural aspect relates to our orientation toward individualism or collectivism. With individualism, the focus is on the individual's needs and interests. Individuals are expected to take care of themselves. Individualism stresses the role of the patient in decision-making. On the other hand, with collectivism, there is a focus on the group needs and interests. Individuals look after one another. There is an emphasis on consensus decision-making, and the family plays a large role in healthcare decisions. Another cultural aspect that can affect communication is the different emphasis on context of high and low context cultures. In high context cultures, people emphasize the social context of communication more than explicit words. Communication is a way of developing social relationships. The status of the speaker and nonverbal cues are important components of communication. A high-context interaction requires more time because a relationship has to be developed and trust and friendship must be established. In low-context cultures, communication is used to exchange words and information. Value is placed on exactness and getting to the point, no beating around the bush. While Asians tend to prefer high-context communication, white males tend to emphasize low-context communication. Different cultures oftentimes have different communication patterns. Culture goes far beyond language. Much is expressed by tone, gestures, and facial expressions. The rules about what certain gestures and looks mean are different from group to group. Eye contact is another aspect that conveys different meaning depending on the group. Direct eye contact in some cultures represents attentiveness and truthfulness. For other cultures, such as Asians, dropping one's eyes is a sign of respect and an expected behavior when communicating with an authority figure. Since the 1960s, several federal laws have been passed to prohibit discrimination and ensure equal employment opportunity. For example, the Equal Pay Act of 1963 prohibits gender differences in pay for substantially equal work. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits employment discrimination on the basis of race, religion, color, sex, or national origin. The Age Discrimination Act of 1967 prohibits age discrimination and restricts mandatory retirement. The Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 1978 requires that women affected by pregnancy or childbirth be treated the same as all employees for employment-related purposes, including benefits. Finally, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, or ADA, prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals on the basis of disability and requires that reasonable accommodations be provided to allow their performance of duties. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is the agency that initiates investigations in response to allegations of discrimination. Let's talk now more specifically of how culture can impact healthcare delivery. We know that culture can influence patients' health beliefs, medical practices, attitudes towards medical care, and levels of trust. As such, culture can impact how health information is received, understood, and acted upon. Oftentimes, clinical barriers occur when cultural differences are not adequately addressed, resulting in lower access and quality of care. The 2003 Institute of Medicine report entitled Unequal Treatment documents racial ethnic disparities in access to care and in the outcomes of care. One of the organizational strategies that has been espoused to address cultural differences and reduce health disparities is cultural competency. While there are many definitions for cultural competency, one recent definition of the National Quality Forum is that cultural competency is the ongoing capacity of healthcare systems, organizations, and professionals to provide for diverse patient populations high-quality care that is family and patient-centered and equitable. The National Quality Forum's definition emphasizes 5 key elements of cultural competency. Ongoing capacity includes the policies, learning processes, and structures by which organizations and individuals develop the attitudes, behaviors, and systems that are needed for effective cross-cultural interactions. High-quality care implies state-of-the-art care based on evidence-based clinical practices. Family-centeredness implies respecting the desire of culturally diverse groups to include their family members in healthcare decision-making. The care is patient-centered when clinicians treat each patient as an individual within the context of his or her care. This requires a partnership among clinicians, patients, and families to ensure that healthcare decisions take into account patient preferences. According to the Institute of Medicine's equity aim, quality of care should not differ because of socio-cultural factors. This concludes ethical and cultural issues related to communication and customer service. In summary, the increasing diversity of both the workforce and patients is impacting healthcare delivery. It's important to understand that diversity is more than race, ethnicity, and that it includes differences based on gender, age, education, religion, sexual orientation, and so forth. While diversity can have both positive and negative consequences, diversity can be leveraged to maximize performance by employing appropriate leadership and management practices. The first step in improving our effectiveness in diverse contexts is to understand the factors that may affect intercultural communication. For example, having ethnocentric views and stereotypes can hinder communication. Cultural differences, such as the emphasis on social context in communication or the degree of individualism or collectivism, can affect communication. Finally, cultural competency is an organizational strategy that can be used to address cultural differences and reduce health disparities. This slide shows several books that can provide more information on this topic.